Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Hello, folks. I am Rochelle Dixon. I'm hosting instead of Bruce Broussard today, so welcome to the show. And with me I have John Sweeney. John is an expert in many things in and around Portland. So we're going to chat with him today about some very pressing issues. Namely, we're going to talk about some taxes, city council, the lack of income in our coffers from the depreciating values of property, and public safety. Those are the biggest issues on all of our minds today. And so we're going to just dive right in. And John, thank you so much for coming here today. And I'd like to hear your perspective a little bit more on the tax debacle and why we should expect a little less money in our coffers and how that's going to affect us.
Well, the taxes are not pure and simple, but one of the things is, since the COVID thing and then the riots in downtown and the fact that we have 20-story buildings all boarded up. And so some of these buildings just a few years ago that sold for $200,000-300,000 are selling for about $3,000. Now what happens after that is the new buyer, and what they do is they go to the Board of Equalization and say this building isn't worth $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, or $500,000. It's only worth say $3 million because that's what I paid for it. So then they get their taxes reduced, and the taxes from the downtown property, it affects the city of Portland, Multnomah County, Portland schools, Portland Community College, and a lot of the small districts like the Education Service District for one. It's going to be the Soil and Water Conservation District. So there's the west and east. Multnomah County is the only one with two of them. They're not big, but they're still getting a slice. So that's going to be derogatory, and right now I'm surprised that the Portland Community College has gone on strike. They haven't settled their union contract, which they should, but they're screaming for raises now.
Well, John, let me stop you right there. So I heard that the cost of living increase that they're getting, or they wanted to give the employees, was 0.35. Is that true?
Well, that's what I heard that they're asking for, but
I believe they're asking for 3 to 5%.
Yeah. And
PCC wants to give them less than 1%. Is
well, in this atmosphere, the fact that the taxes have dropped out of downtown Portland. Now, I was with the city of Portland for 32 years, 8 months, and there was 3 times that we did not get a raise, and because the economics was bad at that time, and so we did not get a raise. So the deal is, it's in fact a few times the state employees did not get a raise because the legislature says we have to save money or whatever, and they did not get a raise. And so that was for the first year of the contract, and that was the same thing with the city of Portland. So they says, the unions and the employees realized they had to keep the city healthy. And the thing is that sometimes you want to suddenly get a raise, and they're in danger of losing people now. I think maybe 200 people is on the block at the present rate, so this could go up, and you're looking at Portland State University is going to close 19 departments. They might go back to being Portland State college, because they were Portland State College for a long time, and they worked hard to become a university. And you have to have these departments are actually like private schools within the university, and they're about to lose them. They're talking about 19 different departments, and that's going now. Thankfully, on their part, isn't going to affect the students this year. But what about after the spring session shuts down?
John, I want to point out something. So the faculty at PCC, they are affected by all the things that are affecting everyone else. So their cost of living is going up dramatically in Portland, and they are not immune from any of the issues that we have in the city. So why is the burden being shifted to the employee? It seems like the burden is being shifted to the staff rather than figuring out another way. I know that raising tuition would probably not be something that people would be excited about, but what are the other options? I mean, you think the only option is for them not to get a raise at all, or to go ahead and take a less than 1% raise? You think that's fair?
Well, I could tell you from going through 3 times where I did not get a raise,
Okay.
that say, hey, this is reality, and reality for my employer. And so they're saying,
Okay.
and they said about it, and the union said to us, and the city park manager says, if this happens, there's going to be fewer people to do this work. And if you think your job may still be there, but you're going to have a lot more to do. And the thing is, I don't care how good you are, there's only so much that you can do.
Yes.
And in fact, since the city of Portland changed its government, I walked around a few parks. I says, it wasn't like that when I was there.
Oh, we should get to that in a moment, because are you so right? We should, but let's put that on the table, because I really want to talk about the Portland
thing
Parks.
is that when you're the employer, whether you're in a private company or in a public, the thing is, how is your employer doing, and is your employer having some problems? And this drop in the property values of the downtown city buildings is catastrophic, and it just doesn't affect city of Portland. It's also Multnomah County and ESD and the schools and the whole work. So this is basically a bunch of people are gathered in the bottom of a pit, and they come up and they just dumped a pile of poop on them, and it's and they've had cutbacks in the city, and how do we work around it? And when I made supervisor with the parks, there was 10 park districts, and then a couple other things. So what they did is then they had a hammer hit them, and so they went to 8 districts. And just as I left at the end of '97, they went to 6 districts. And the trouble with that is you also had more road time getting around to doing your job, and so
They cut down your efficiency.
you can't take your pickup truck and run it like an Indy 500 car. You have to obey the rules when you're driving from place to place. And they trimmed back a little bit, and you maneuvered and figured it out the best you could and worked that out.
I get that from the employer's perspective, but the employees have to do the same thing. And so most of them probably live in the Portland area or maybe in the suburbs. But what happens when they don't get that increase? Do you think that they can continue to live in this area with rising rents and still having a property tax burden? If they own, and if they're renting, they're still paying those taxes, but through their rent. Do you think that we could potentially lose some of our faculty members, some of our individuals who are helping to shape our young folks? What do you think?
Well, yes, that's true. Now, in that vein, when the Vietnam War ended, they also ended the draft. And so people were going into college, guys, to avoid the draft. And sometimes they got their bachelor's degree and the war's still going on, so they went for a master's program, and then they're still going on, so they went for a doctorate program, and someone come to the end and says, well, I better get married and all that, and some of them, after a few years, they divorce the wife, and the wife picks up the phone, draft board, guess who's single? And the deal is when you get a draft deferment, your age, your liability is extended to age 35. So.
Oh boy. We should talk about that later with what else is going on.
So that type of thing. So. But
I'm afraid we're going to lose some of our young people. Well, I'm afraid we're going to lose some of the faculty. And then when we don't have great faculty, and I think we do have good faculty at PCC and PSU, I'm a little bit biased because I did attend classes at PCC, so I'm a little biased. But I think there's some great faculty, and I think when the good faculty leave, that you'll have less students. And I do think you'll have less students as a result of what I think we can fairly call a recession. I mean, maybe we haven't named it that yet, but with food prices going up, inflation, gas prices, with the war in Iran, I think there are a lot of folks who would just choose to work because they need to work to cover their rent, their expenses, and college will become a secondary or not even a pursuit.
Well, I'm a PCC grad in management, so I have pretty good handle on managing things. And in the Army National Guard, I was an ordnance officer, which is in the back, and so I had my ordnance officer's basic and advanced, and I graduated the United States Army's Command and General Staff College. And the thing is, you plan for the worst and hope for the best. And
yes.
The thing is that you just have to realize that the money's coming up short and everybody's suffering.
Yeah.
And one of the things is a lot of people are finding out that college has not worked out that well, because right after, like when the people didn't show up and the professors are, what are we going to do? I might have to shovel poop for a living. And so they convinced everybody out there to that you needed college. The government, they needed it, and the businesses needed it, and families needed it. And so a lot of things like learning how to do the trades and stuff kind of slipped aside, and so they got into college. And I listened to Dave Ramsey and Clark Howard and a couple others, and people are calling up and they've got $500,000 of school debt, and they kept changing their major, and so they've got 6 years of college, and they don't even have an associate's degree out of it. And so these guys are asking, well, did you take any management or business classes or that? None of it. They took flowers and bees or something like that.
But I have to say that one of the challenges is when you put money behind any endeavor, you're incentivizing that endeavor. So when we gave teenagers, 18, 19, very young adults, unlimited loans, there are different kinds of loans you could get, right? So your parents could get a loan, you could get a loan. Then there are also grants, Pell Grants, federal grants, state grants, and then also scholarships you could apply for. So there was a lot of money being pushed into that. We incentivized people to go to college, and with that, we incentivized them to take out what I think was bad debt. I say that as a person who did not take out tons of debts. I had a debt. I was a very untraditional college student. I went to a vocational school first, right here, and then went to PCC, and then from there went on to University of Maryland. But I pretty much paid my own way, worked my way through school. I'm not saying that was the best the best plan. But I also tested out of courses. I got very creative, tried to use work. But I understand why people would take out those loans so that they could get to their work career sooner rather than later versus going part-time and working it out. But I do think the government has some responsibility for giving young people huge amounts of money before they have basically been out on their own and handled money, but they're giving them all this money and everybody's saying college, college, college. I still think college is a great value. I don't see it only as being for work, but I do see the damage that's been done by just incentivizing everyone to go to college and incentivizing everyone that no matter what you're pursuing in college, that is a good idea, because some of it won't pay you. And if that's your point, to go to college to get a career and earn a living, and you're taking some courses that maybe aren't going to help you make the best living, you're...
Well, in that vein, the thing is that my second grandson, and this is in California, when he got out of high school and he wanted to go to college, so he went to Victor Valley College, which is a 2-year college. Well, a sneaky so-and-so in the end of the second year, when he was taking full shot, one of the classes did not count for his graduation. So he had to go take another term, another semester, and they're on a semester system. So he took some extra classes. But the school he wanted to transfer to did not accept mid-year transfers. So the thing is, he had put him another year behind.
Yes.
And then another thing they do, sometimes you go, and I tell kids, you got to graduate from high school, because if you don't, you go in there and they'll tell you, you need to take writing 70 or math 90, and which is
remedial classes.
They're remedial classes
that don't count at the college academic level.
They take time and money, but they do not count towards your degree.
Correct.
They eat you up. So, and then some of them will give you a bad class, so you have to take longer, and that's to keep their head count up, because the head count is really something that's important to the schools. But so,
you know, I think that might be true in some instances. I just want to point out that PCC, I think, has had, a lot of students and a lot of opportunity to educate those students. I think one of the challenges is with the downturn in the economy in Portland and with the bad press. Let's go there for a moment. With George Floyd, with also ICE, the interactions that we had with ICE, there are a lot of students who won't be going to PSU this year.
yeah.
There are a lot of students who won't be going to PCC this year because they come from other countries. So if you don't know, viewers, if you don't know, 56,000 individuals moved into Oregon last year. Of those 56,000 that moved into Oregon last year, all of them were from immigration. We lost individuals to other states by about 1,000. So if we're having problems with ICE, and we're definitely having problems with ICE, and we're having problems with our downtown, and we haven't talked about crime yet, but we're having problems with crime, I don't see that a lot of individuals want to pack up and send their children here for college. And I also see that children who are 18 or 19 may be looking at colleges that are private or out of town, or something to maybe give them a little variety and to get away from some of the dynamic that's here. And that has nothing to do with PCC or PSU, but it's just a reality, right? So if I had a child that was going to college downtown at PSU, and I heard about what happened at PSU with the protests that happened over Palestine in Gaza and Israel, and I heard about ICE, and I wouldn't send my child here. So I'm not sure that that's going to increase enrollment. I see what you're saying about PCC being in a bad position. What do you think are some other solutions besides the staff just not having a raise? You think they should accept what's being offered? What do you think can happen?
Well, a couple of things. First, there is an agreement between Montana and Oregon where you could go and our kids could go to Montana at in-state rates, and the Montana people can come here for in-state rates. Now, the other thing about the paying for college, that they colleges went and they bought themselves a congressman. See, so the deal is and my second grandson went to the University of California, Santa Clara, and there wasn't many federal loans because I talked to him about the financing. There were lots and lots of private loans, but the deal is you cannot go bankrupt on a school loan. And in fact, what's happened is that some of the scammers created a college and run around to people saying, you could get into this and it'll give you a better life. And they would get a number of people who would get these loans, and they might give them some information that they pass out, and then they would go out of business. And so here's these people who may be minimum wage job type people who were hoping for this leap out of the hole. All of a sudden, they don't. It's a farce, and so all of a sudden they've got a $50,000 loan.
And often when some of them did graduate, I'm familiar with the problem, they weren't actually making sufficient income to pay back the loan. So some of those a lot of them were vocational schools. I think one of them was, I hate to discredit the company, so I'm not going to mention their name because I might be wrong. But there was a technical school that had that problem, and the government ended up discharging the loans because there was so much fraud in that school. Other schools that typically have had issues, unfortunately, basic nursing schools. There's a lot of them that have started and have not adequately trained the individuals, and so the individuals come out not able to be employed because they actually don't have an adequate education. Thankfully, PCC and PSU aren't having that problem, but I do understand what you're saying about the scams. Do we want our brightest? Do we want them going to Montana for college, or is there another solution to keep them here and to keep our staff? What other kinds of concessions do you think can typically be made in these kinds of union relations?
Well, one of the things that we as citizens of Portland can be really proud of is the best public university in Oregon is PSU in most cases. And the best community college is PCC in most cases. There's somebody I know, they went to Mount Hood because one particular little niche was the best. And somebody else went to Oregon State University because that one little niche was better than PSU. But generally speaking, PSU is the best 4-year institution and PCC is the best 2-year institution. And I graduated from PCC in management, which was turned around to be quite helpful. And but it's still, the thing is, you have to look at the money's coming up short. So what are you going to do to save the situation? And I can understand these people talking about, talk about the inflation and all that, but the deal is with the city of Portland, I went through it 3 times. And
okay.
So the thing is,
it just happens periodically,
and and the fact that is we do have the 2 best institutions here in Portland, but the thing is, it's still the money's coming up short, and everybody's going to pay for it one way or the other, because the deal is we as citizens are not going to get other services because of the shortness of the money.
Yes, and this is a good point to talk about other services, because we've talked about PCC and the strike. I know that they're out striking right now on the picket line, and I hope that that's resolved soon. But we're talking about the lack of funding coming in because of downtown not being what it once was. Let's talk about why that is. Now, I have some ideas. We've talked about this on the show before, that downtown is just basically a shadow of what it used to be. It definitely has not returned since COVID. I hear people saying, well, the street traffic is just a little better. It may be a little better, but it's not sufficient to support the businesses. So they're selling, and we're seeing this. There's not even a McDonald's downtown. There's not a 7-Eleven downtown. Just some basic little things that you used to see. We don't have those things anymore. Our fine dining is closing up. Our vegan restaurants are going away. You might not be vegan, but you might want to know that we're a really important state for veganism and tourism, vegan tourism. So people come to our city and our state to just enjoy the different restaurants and the carts. And I see people fleeing downtown. What do you think that we could do to improve, or what could City Council do to incentivize a return to downtown? I want to say that one thing I think they could do is incentivize small businesses that are hurting by giving them those storefronts at a reduced amount versus leaving them empty. And obviously that isn't something that everyone has to participate in, but I think having someone in your store at a reduced rate versus having all your windows broken out and having to replace those things, I'm going to take the reduced rate. I'm not saying that that should be the either or, but that's the reality. So you have a business, you're downtown, you come in, there are people at your door before you can even get into the building. There are people sleeping outside your door, and I just think with more activity, more traffic, we'd see less of that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, actually, a lot of times they've helped new people, but they didn't help the existing people. So it's a combination of helping the existing people and the
existing businesses are the houseless.
Say again?
What are we talking about? Existing businesses?
Existing businesses.
Yes.
I remember they had over on Union Avenue. There was this real nice restaurant I went to, and
now MLK.
But anyway.
Yeah.
This lady was running this thing, had been there several times. They helped everybody else but her, and her business went down. And
yes.
See, and she had 7 kids, so the deal is, she and several employees, but they
was
didn't
it a bakery?
Help her. Huh?
Is it a bakery?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I remember which one.
Okay. Yeah. But you go downtown, the thing is, you need to help the people who are there to stay there, and somehow to control the rates and stuff. And one of the things they talk about giving up on or cutting back on is the system development charges. There was it was out in Belmont, and the pizza place wanted to move across the street.
Before you go into that, can you explain what a system development charge is?
Well, they have to do a test on the transportation, a survey, and then you do a test on the foot traffic and the lighting and
so you
and all
quantify
that
the
kind of
resources
stuff.
In the area.
And so it's just like President Trump said, you want to build something, the cost, 40% of the cost is paper. It's look at the CRC, the Columbia River Crossing, $30 million, and what have you got? You got basically a book report gathering dust. So they and I've attended a couple of their meetings, it's really sickening. But anyway, the thing is that they have all this paper that everybody has to do their thing, and in fact, there was a couple of businesses that went out on Hawthorne because they're getting ready to open, and the people who are going to do the inspection went on 3 weeks vacation in both cases. So this one was a small piece of place, and this was in May. Well, next thing you know, it didn't get improved it couldn't start until the last week of June. This was the time to really build the business as the weather got good. And another one,
so you're saying that we need to
thing.
reduce the paperwork so that it's easier to get through the process,
Correct.
and the employees have less work to do so that they can attend to the individuals that are in place, and then perhaps attract new individuals based on the fact that other people are there and there's more traffic, and you can quantify that. Is that what you're saying?
Well, both of these, they were dealing with some inspectors. See, says, okay, we'll approve this. Well, they didn't tell the people that they're going to go on vacation for 3 weeks, and the system didn't have somebody to backfill for them so that these businesses could start on time. And and one of the things in the city, one of the city commissioners, he got all of the permitting process consolidated. Worked a while, and he got out and things went along, and then they split it all up again, because it used to be you had to go to 3 or 4 offices or more, and they got it consolidated for a while. Now they're talking about consolidating again, and hopefully they'll do that. But
So the process is too cumbersome,
Right.
too long, and there's not enough individuals who are specialized in it to actually be able to handle the number of businesses. Now that could change, because the way business is being handled downtown, I suspect a lot of more people would go. But what do you think about the possibility of individuals who have those businesses, those storefronts that aren't being used, offering them perhaps to the city to maybe manage some of the small business that want to come in, or maybe just having artists come in, or something else that can, as they say in the Caribbean, lively up the place. It's kind of depressing to go downtown. What are your thoughts on what the city council can do, and even Multnomah County, and I'm not going to go to the Oregon State, because it's just way beyond what I think most people are interested in right now. We're really invested in seeing a city council that's proficient in making things happen downtown.
Well, what they need actually the system to do is that when a construction or something starts, that they assign one person beginning to end. Because what's happened before, I had friends have some work done on their house, and they'd have one inspector going along doing pretty good. Then they have another guy come in and says, well, he didn't like this, didn't like that. The previous instructor liked it, or inspectors. So the fact that they got to have the fact that when this job comes out, they put it on the desk of this inspector, and he or she handles it beginning to end.
And what about reducing the paperwork? Do you think that that's a process that would help, one, reduce cost, and also make it easier for individuals to...
Well, the consolidation would be good, because the thing is, you could lay it out and you could see all these fees at one time, rather than say you paid a third of them and all of a sudden come to something else, and you say, well, gee, if I knew about that, I wouldn't have started this. So they're kind of like they've jumped out of the plane, and then they're discussing the color of the parachute and so on.
So streamlining the process would help.
You bet.
What about the businesses that want to be in downtown, but just feel like it's not going to snap back soon enough?
But you have to get it. Like I say, the consolidation, because one of the things is when you're in business, is one of the things to consider is ROA, return on investment. And it's because my management training, there's always a better way, and a better way isn't the obvious way. So you're thinking it's something is a little better, but the deal is on ROA is the 3% improvement worth 15%. And this is the fact that you have, in fact, a lot of the reconstruction is what they call a one-wall remodel.
Oh my goodness. So
because if you do the whole thing, it's a lot more costly permit-wise, and it takes longer. for it going through the process. But if you leave one wall up, so to speak, it goes a little faster.
Yeah, they used to do that in the old days. I didn't even know that was permissible. But I want to move on to this subject, because I think we're talking about downtown, and I think that if you haven't been downtown lately, you might not know how many businesses are not open and how many buildings are closed. They're just not being operated. They're empty. Should we have a vacancy tax? That's been floated around. I don't know about a vacancy tax. It seems that that is the wrong way to go, but it would shore up some of the income, right? So if we had a vacancy tax, how do you feel about that? Do you think that would further drive business away? Do you feel like it would shore up some of the vacancies so that more people would pour into downtown? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, when they always talk about the scam, see, so if you have a system, there's a way to scam it. So the deal is, you and I have properties been vacant, see, and the limit comes up that we have a tax to pay. The deal is we could swap property and then swap back, and we actually each time on this swap or sale run the prices further on down, then where taxes would be less. But
now, see, I didn't think of that. There are definitely people who would do something like that. Are you saying that that would be like a major thing? That would be something that would happen quite often? Or do you think that people would just pay the vacancy tax or either fill the building?
Well, one of the things about the present tax system is the fact that would be a write-off. Mm-hmm. See, and when I've talked about taxes, I'm in favor of a low flat rate income tax. Mm-hmm. No exemptions, no deductions. And you'd be looking, say, at are pieces of property that aren't occupied. In fact, somebody had a thing that says, you know, if you can't get anybody to move in, lower the rate to get somebody in. And I took Money Magazine once a long time ago, and they were interviewing a couple, and they went in for the interview, mm-hmm. and they had several houses, and things were going along good. And this guy says, your vacancy rate's too low. You're not charging enough rent. Well, you know, if somebody comes in, and I lived in an apartment house, and some of the people had lived there 30 years because mm-hmm. the rates were real reasonable. It was close to everything, and it was a comfortable place in a safe area. And so when you raise your rate, say you're running a restaurant or something like that, you figure you're going to lose a certain amount. Yep. So when you make that raise, you're going to have a part built in there, the fact that you're going to lose some. So you're raising, say, 10%, but mm-hmm. the deal is the payoff might be only 7% until, say, later on. And how long can you suffer the lower rate before it equalizes?
Mm-hmm. And it's true that a lot of the vacancies are office spaces mm-hmm. that are zoned for strictly office use. Mm-hmm. And the reason why they're empty is because they have remote workers, they required less workers, mm-hmm. And they're not using them since COVID. Would rezoning be part of a solution, do you think? I'm for rezoning. If people can live and work in the same area, I think that's great. I don't think it works all the time, but I do think there are certain areas, and downtown definitely is a place where this can happen. You go to Washington, D.C. or New York, it's what it looks like. There's a building right here that's an apartment, and then 2 blocks over there's a deli and a small building with an apartment, and then there's all these different kinds of facilities in walking distance. And downtown, I think, could look like that if we would allow, for example, in what used to be Chinatown, which is now called Old Town. I don't like that name. Before that it was Japantown, but I kind of like the idea of Chinatown still being there, and I like the sculpture. But why not have the housing? It's being used a lot for the homeless community, and it's been that way for years. That's one reason why Chinatown is not there. Why not build the infrastructure to actually serve that community there?
Well, I think that it'd be good
zoning?
if they design it in and people could go to it willingly. But the
Affordable apartments is what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Change these offices on this where no one wants to actually have an office anymore, or they no longer need it because they have so many remote workers. Why not change the zoning so that we can have mixed use zoning and we can have apartments next to a small grocery store, next to, that makes sense?
Well, that's a good idea. In fact, the thing is that actually converting an office building to apartments isn't physically that hard to do, but they're going through zoning on it, and maybe the apartments in long term, when things recover, the profit on that wouldn't be as much as on an office. But the thing is, that is good. But they're actually trying to force a 15-minute city, where the deal is basically it's to get you out of your car, or you'll have to walk or take a bicycle. And like some of the European cars, if you come from outside, they have parking lots outside, then you walk in or bike into to doing your stuff. But that's the deal that they're forcing you to do it. And I wouldn't want to force you to do anything.
No. Well, I appreciate
it might be
that.
difficult, but the deal is, because I don't want to be forced to do anything, and so.
But a lot of people don't want to drive anymore. I mean, I would be perfect.
Well, that's their choice.
There's a lot of people who buy downtown condos because they want to be within the walking distance of activities like the Keller Center. They want to be in that space. So it just seems logical that we would look at the zoning. And I know that that's not an overnight solution, but we need to have an emergency plan. I just don't think that the city council and Multnomah County is doing a good job of rethinking this. If what we're doing is not working, we have to change and do something else.
Well, our bus system is better than most, but it's coming up short. But they need to inspire people to take public transportation. And in fact, one time I was running for office and I was talking to Willamette Week, and they didn't like me, so they didn't like my plan. They belittled it. But the thing is, on education, and that's to educate the public. See, and if you own a car, and there's three types of insurance. There's commercial. Well, if you have to use your car or truck in the business, that's just the way it is. And then there's business and pleasure, and this is what most people get because you're driving to and from work and school, and then you're personal. But there's pleasure only, and it's really important for retired people to, when they retire, is to go that, because or the fact if you're taking public transportation, and because your insurance rate will drop 10 to 30%, and
that's great. I'd like to hear about the pleasure insurance, but I want to tell you something. So I have a commitment to take public transportation. And the commitment is once a week, at least, to take public transportation. And the reason why it's once a week is because if I'm really busy with things, it may not work out that way, right? And so I did this a couple weeks ago. And when I went to take the public transportation, I actually Ubered someplace, and then I was going to take public transportation back. And I decided to take a walk. It wasn't too far from here. And as I walked, I noticed when I got to a bus station, I wanted to be down where the Max was. There was a gentleman in the bus station using meth. And I was shocked because it was the middle of the day. It was like 3 o'clock. And he was right in front of a very important area, just openly doing meth. And I realized that I did not know what the effect of meth would be, the vapors and that kind of thing. And I thought to myself, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I think this commitment may not make it through, because I've tried several times, and a couple times, at least twice, it's been there's someone doing meth one time on a bus, and then at the shelters, some people don't feel safe on the max or on the bus. So again, safety is an issue. Sure, we want to use public transportation, but realistically, with the drug use, the crimes, the houseless situation.
Well, two things. I was at a business and I was talking to about this thing, and one of the guys lived on the Max line, and he worked at a place off the Max line, and they supplied parking.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, and he was taking the Max, and because it was convenient and wasn't using his car, and so I told him about that, and he had Safeco. And next time he seen me, he had a smile like this. He dropped his insurance rate 20%. So not only do you save money on your insurance, the fact that you're not buying as much fuel, sooner or later they're going to come out with a carbon tax, and this is why the thing is they want to get you on pump your own gas, because you're going to be using your credit card. So all they have to do is a credit card company tickles the ivories, and it says you bought at these places, and they'll send you a bill from the federal government or the state for your carbon tax.
And I like saving money, though. I do like saving money.
But you'd save money.
But what about my security?
Well,
my safety.
It used to be that they had the TriMet police were riding the Max and riding on the buses. They would get on, ride down so far, get off, and go somewhere else. So. And they did a real good job, but now the people that they have is the safety people, and they are not policemen. And so and some of the people that they're doing bad things, they would get off at the next stop. Well, that happens some with the police officers, but the deal is the people that are doing bad things always had an eye out for when they see the police get on. In fact, they'd sit there, and the police are standing on the bus stop. They'd get off the bus or TriMet before the Max,
mm-hmm.
before the police officers actually got on.
I really support public transportation, but we're going to have to realize that people are not going to get on public transportation if they feel unsafe. And so my former employer offered to pay for my transportation back and forth to work. The times of my work did not coincide with times I would like to be on public transportation. So 5 o'clock in the morning. And also late at night. So there's some issues there, but I really am a supporter of public transportation. I do like the idea of having walkable cities. I don't know that we're not going that direction anyway. I mean, when you go downtown, a lot of times you don't want to drive because you don't want to pay for parking. It may be difficult, more time consuming. So that's where it really becomes important. Public transportation can do a lot, because I think moving people in one space, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to the bus, which is stopping and taking people all over. What do you think about maybe incentivizing public transportation in some way? How would you incentivize that more than employers are already doing with the discounts? What do you think would incentivize people, if not the walkable cities area, to take public transportation?
Well, it would be the education, the fact that there's an advantage to using public transportation because of the savings, the fact that your cars will last longer, and the fact that you will save money on insurance and money on gasoline,
which is pretty important right now.
Because you can, because a bus pass costs less than a monthly bus pass costs less than monthly parking. So there's another big savings, because not all the employers provide parking for their employees. Mm-hmm. And if you have business only insurance, it's okay to once in a while take your car to work, because say you live in Gresham, and then the deal is it's Friday and you want to leave for Seaside. Well, going to Gresham and then coming back through is kind of bad, but if you could hop in your car and leave, that works out real well. And so I've known people that have done that, and husband and wife, they worked down there and they had kids old enough, and they would come down and meet them when they got off work, and they just go to the coast, and they would save them a lot of time. So it's imagine the education part they'll know that they'll save quite a bit of money by using public transportation.
And I think the reason why I use the public transportation isn't about the money savings, because actually I find that it is a sacrifice. I find that it's a sacrifice for time.
Yeah.
And what I do find that's important to me is that if no one uses it, we won't have it available.
That's right. And so is the thing, is it to inspire people to use public transportation so it doesn't go away. And this is the trouble that they're looking at cutting back on TriMet in some places. In fact, there was one woman, that's how she gets to work at Lewis and Clark College. And if she didn't do that, she'd have to walk about a mile or so. That's as close as it would come. But it's still the education and the fact that you could lay it out on how much money you're saving, it'd be worthwhile. And
I think there's a couple other points here. I do it also for climate change, right? So I'm concerned about the amount of driving that we all do, and I think if we could do less, it would be great. Now, I'm not going to get on a bicycle, okay? I'm just not going to. I'm afraid of the cars. I don't want to get on a scooter. I don't want to do anything alternative, but I can do the bus. I feel like the bus is relatively safe. It's well lit. Most places are well lit. And I think public transportation does a really good job at that. So I haven't seen any problems with TriMet, except for some of the users misusing it and making it difficult.
If you have more legitimate people using it, then
the
undesirables would be out.
That's why I tend to try and use it just one day a week. I'm not going to use it all the time, but we don't have that much time left, but there's really something I want to get to. You were talking about the parks. Now, I'm going to have to look this up because I want to get this right. Now, John, you worked at the parks. How long did you work with the Park and Recreation?
32 years, 8 months.
32 years, 8 months. Oh, do you have it down to the days? You don't have it down to the days?
I started on Monday, the 5th of May, 1965 to the 31st of December, 1997.
Okay, so you actually do remember. That is so perfect. So how many parks do we have right now in Portland?
I think it's about 200. See, and we prided ourselves that there was a park within 3/4 of a mile of every citizen.
And what do you think about the parks today? How usable are they?
The maintenance on them is slipped quite a bit, because they've cut back because they're spending money on a lot of other things. And
now, what do you think those other things are that they're spending money on, though?
Well, they're doing a lot for the homeless and all that. See, and the deal is, with Resolution A in 1981 or 83, the social services were to be done by the county. And then, in fact, that's when the city of Portland expanded from a 10 mile by 10 mile square to a 10 mile by 15 mile rectangle. And in fact, on that is, at the time they had 800 police officers and they should have had 1,000, and now they've got 50% more land, and the population is about double at that time, and I think they only have about 700 officers.
Yeah, I think, I'm like, I would really like to not have to have more police. Clearly, we're going to have more police because they've been given more responsibility. It's not just that the population has grown, but before, they didn't have the responsibilities that they did. And what I mean by that is the houseless population has really affected the police, because they're frequently called for vagrancy issues, someone hanging out, someone actually having a problem on the street, or someone not wanting to see someone on the street that's houseless. So a lot of their calls involve 50% involve unhoused people. So we're really going to have to do something about this. But I want to get back to the park because there's just been a change in a park. So we had the former Custer Park. Do you know where that is?
Yes.
So Southwest Portland, they've had Custer Park since 1964. Now you think, why would they name it Custer Park in 1964 instead of during the time when Custer actually lived, and maybe name it Custer after he died? But they waited a long time, to name it Custer Park. So in 1964, Southwest Portland got Custer Park, and I happen to live in the area, and I don't like the name Custer because I understand what happened and how that affected the native population. I'm black and native, and I started a petition to get rid of the name Custer Park. And Amanda Frantz was so considerate and actually got rid of the name. And then there was a process to get this renamed. Now I want to say this started in 2018. 2018, yes. And at that point in 2018, it just didn't seem like a big deal. Now we're here, it's been renamed. I'm going to try and pronounce the name. You can go on the Oregon government site and they'll give you a way of pronouncing the name. I don't want to get it wrong, but it means the path of the huckleberry. And it's in a native language. So we're very proud of that. But we've got just a couple minutes to go, but tell me a little bit about the parks, because I'm somewhat disappointed in what I'm seeing in the parks in the last few years. So it's been a while. I'd say the last time I was really happy was maybe when Nick Fish was around, and that's been some time. So we've got a couple minutes left. Tell me about the Portland Park situation, what we can do to improve our services.
Well, one of the things is when I started in 1965 as a laborer, and they've changed the title of the job now, and then I worked at several parks, and mostly in Southeast, and then I got to be an equipment operator, and I was a mower operator, cut 18 feet of grass at a time. Really liked the job, and had it started out in Southeast Portland, and then I was moved to the Southwest side, mowed Council Crest Park on an angle like that, and mowed Harbor Drive, which is now Tom McCall Park, and I really enjoyed that job, because when I showed up and did my thing, and when I left it looked a lot better. And then later,
how does it look now? Because we've got just about a minute left.
Okay. Well, one of the things is being in the park, I can see the details that are bad, and they have a lot of leaks, and there's a lot of soft ground that you shouldn't be soft, and they've turned around and they've closed some restroom buildings, and they have chemical toilets, and it's just not kept up. And
so you think like the bathrooms could be painted, unlocked, made usable, the ground could be resodded, or things like that. So do you think the cash flow problem is the reason why that hasn't happened?
That's part of it, and the fact that they take some of the money and they're doing this support for the homeless and a lot of the people that should have been done by Multnomah County because of Resolution A, because you have all these people getting into this one thing, and so you have all these bosses from all these different ones.
Oh, I know. So we're going to have to continue this conversation because we're wrapping up here in just a few seconds, but I really appreciate you being here today, John. Thank you so much for viewing, and we'll talk about this the next time I see you, John. Thanks so much for coming in today.
A real pleasure.
Thank you.